Chapter 4. The Murder of Ishbosheth. When Ishbosheth, Saul's son, heard that Abner was dead in Hebron, his hands became feeble, and all the Israelites were troubled. Ishbosheth, Saul's son, had 2 men who were captains of bands. The name of the one was Baanah, and the name of the other Rechab, the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, of the children of Benjamin. For Beeroth also is reckoned to Benjamin. And the Beerothites fled to Gittaim, and have lived as foreigners there until this day. Now Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son who was lame of his feet. He was 5 years old when the news came of Saul and Jonathan out of Jezreel. And his nurse took him up and fled. And it happened, as she made haste to flee, that he fell and became lame. His name was Mephibosheth. The sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, Rechab and Baanah, went and came about the heat of the day to the house of Ishbosheth, as he took his rest at noon. They came there into the midst of the house, as though they would have fetched wheat, and they struck him in the body. And Rechab and Baanah his brother escaped. Now when they came into the house, as he lay on his bed in his bedroom, they struck him, and killed him, and beheaded him, and took his head, and went by the way of the Arabah all night. They brought the head of Ishbosheth to David, to Hebron, and said to the king, Behold, the head of Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, your enemy, who sought your life. Yahweh has avenged my lord the king this day of Saul and of his seed. David kills the murderers. David answered Rechab and Baanah his brother, the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, and said to them, As Yahweh lives, who has redeemed my soul out of all adversity, when someone told me, Behold, Saul is dead, thinking to have brought good news, I took hold of him and killed him in Ziklag, which was the reward I gave him for his news. How much more, when wicked men have slain a righteous person in his own house, on his bed, shall I not now require his blood of your hand, and take you away from the earth? David commanded his young men, and they killed them, and cut off their hands and their feet, and hanged them up beside the pool in Hebron. But they took the head of Ishbosheth, and buried it in the grave of Abner in Hebron. Chapter 5. David anointed king over Israel. Then came all the tribes of Israel to David to Hebron, and spoke, saying, Behold, we are your bone and your flesh. In times past, when Saul was king over us, it was you who led out and brought in Israel. Yahweh said to you, You shall be shepherd of my people Israel, and you shall be prince over Israel. So all the elders of Israel came to the king to Hebron, and King David made a covenant with them in Hebron before Yahweh, and they anointed David king over Israel. David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. In Hebron he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and in Jerusalem he reigned 33 years over all Israel and Judah. David conquers Jerusalem. The king and his men went to Jerusalem against the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, who spoke to David, saying, Unless you take away the blind and the lame, you shall not come in here. Thinking, David can't come in here. Nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion. The same is the city of David. David said on that day, Whoever strikes the Jebusites, let him get up to the watercourse and strike the lame and the blind, who are hated by David's soul. Therefore they say, the blind and the lame can't come into the house. David lived in the stronghold and called it the city of David. David built around from Millo and inward. David grew greater and greater, for Yahweh, the God of armies, was with him. Hiram, king of Tyre, sent messengers to David, and cedar trees, and carpenters, and masons, and they built David a house. David's family grows. David perceived that Yahweh had established him king over Israel, and that he had exalted his kingdom for his people Israel's sake. David took him more concubines and wives out of Jerusalem, after he was come from Hebron, and there were yet sons and daughters born to David. These are the names of those who were born to him in Jerusalem: Shammua, and Shobab, and Nathan, and Solomon, and Ibhar, and Elishua, and Nepheg, and Japhiah, and Elishama, and Eliada, and Eliphalet. David defeats the Philistines. When the Philistines heard that they had anointed David king over Israel, all the Philistines went up to seek David, and David heard of it, and went down to the stronghold. Now the Philistines had come and spread themselves in the valley of Rephaim. David inquired of Yahweh, saying, Shall I go up against the Philistines? Will you deliver them into my hand? Yahweh said to David,
Go up, for I will certainly deliver the Philistines into your hand.
David came to Baal Perazim, and David struck them there. And he said, Yahweh has broken my enemies before me, like the breach of waters. Therefore he called the name of that place Baal Perazim. They left their images there, and David and his men took them away. The Philistines came up yet again, and spread themselves in the valley of Rephaim. When David inquired of Yahweh, he said,
You shall not go up. Circle around behind them, and attack them over against the mulberry trees. It shall be, when you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the mulberry trees, that then you shall stir yourself up. For then Yahweh has gone out before you to strike the army of the Philistines.
David did so, as Yahweh commanded him, and struck the Philistines from Geba until you come to Gezer. Chapter 6. David fetches the ark. David again gathered together all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. David arose and went with all the people who were with him from Baale-Judah to bring up from there the ark of God, which is called by the name, even the name of Yahweh of armies, who sits above the cherubim. They set the ark of God on a new cart, and brought it out of the house of Abinadab that was in the hill. And Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, drove the new cart. They brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was in the hill, with the ark of God, and Ahio went before the ark. Uzzah and the ark. David and all the house of Israel played before Yahweh with all kinds of instruments made of fir wood, and with harps, and with stringed instruments, and with tambourines, and with castanets, and with cymbals. When they came to the threshing floor of Nacon, Uzzah put forth his hand to the ark of God, and took hold of it, for the cattle stumbled. The anger of Yahweh was kindled against Uzzah, and God struck him there for his error. And there he died by the ark of God. David was displeased because Yahweh had broken forth on Uzzah, and he called that place Perez Uzzah to this day. David was afraid of Yahweh that day, and he said, "How shall the ark of Yahweh come to me?" So David would not move the ark of Yahweh to be with him in the city of David. But David carried it aside into the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. The ark of Yahweh remained in the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite 3 months, and Yahweh blessed Obed-Edom and all his house. The ark brought to Jerusalem. It was told King David, saying, "Yahweh has blessed the house of Obed-Edom and all that pertains to him, because of the ark of God." David went and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom into the city of David with joy. It was so that, when those who bore the ark of Yahweh had gone 6 paces, he sacrificed an ox and a fattened calf. David danced before Yahweh with all his might, and David was clothed in a linen ephod. So David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of Yahweh with shouting and with the sound of the trumpet. Michal's contempt for David. It was so, as the ark of Yahweh came into the city of David, that Michal, the daughter of Saul, looked out at the window and saw King David leaping and dancing before Yahweh, and she despised him in her heart. They brought in the ark of Yahweh and set it in its place, in the midst of the tent that David had pitched for it. And David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before Yahweh. When David had made an end of offering the burnt offering and the peace offerings, he blessed the people in the name of Yahweh of armies. He dealt among all the people, even among the whole multitude of Israel, both to men and women, to everyone, a cake of bread, and a portion of flesh, and a cake of raisins. So all the people departed, everyone to his house. Then David returned to bless his household. Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David, and said, "How glorious the king of Israel was today, who uncovered himself today in the eyes of the handmaids of his servants, as one of the vain fellows shamelessly uncovers himself." David said to Michal, "It was before Yahweh, who chose me above your father and above all his house, to appoint me prince over the people of Yahweh, over Israel. Therefore will I celebrate before Yahweh. I will be yet more vile than this, and will be base in my own sight. But of the handmaids of whom you have spoken, they shall honor me." Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no child to the day of her death.